Happy Thursday, folks. It is Sharla Kornegay coming live to you guys with another Forever Friends Academy episode. How are you this Thursday evening? We are almost to the weekend, folks. And I don't know about you guys, but if you're anything like me, oh my gosh, these days are flying. I feel like the summer was a blink. That's how I feel. I feel like it was a blink of the eye. And now summer's over, for me, because, where I live, we don't have summer all the time. Hey, Bag World DC, thank you for popping in. I feel like summer was just like, oh my gosh. It came and it went in a blink of an eye for me. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the last bit of your summer days. I know some people have probably, if you have children, they've started school depending on where you are. And depending on where you are, you might be in a state where it's summer all the time, right? But for me, it's not. We have all 4 seasons, and I always feel like the summer is but a blink of an eye. And then it's gone. So anyway, I've been trying to enjoy the last of my summer days. That's what I've been doing. But that's on another note. Let me introduce myself just in case there are any new people coming in to join the conversation and check the episode out for tonight. My name is Sharla Kornegay. I am an author, a recording artist, founder of Interest Coaching, and Forever Friends Academy, which is group coaching that I do. It's a subscription-based membership, has many different levels. And the show that you're watching right now is named after the same, right? Name, Forever Friends Academy. And what I like to do is basically create an authentic, safe environment to talk about all relationship topics, because relationships are the heartbeat of our existence. Everything that we build here is connected to our relationships, whether it be with our creator, whether it be with ourselves, familial relationships, definitely romantic relationships. So I think having a space where we can kind of dive into topics that, at least from my experience, throughout all my education that I've gone through, we don't talk about it, right? And it's the area of life that can change the trajectory of your life in so many different ways, So that's my goal. And I am definitely, if you've ever checked out any of my music, when I'm on stage, I go by Sharla K. But if you ever checked out any of my music, if you've ever come to any of the podcasts, you will definitely know that I am a believer of love. I really feel like everything we do here is fueled by love, whether it's us trying to understand it, learn how to express it to our fullest, learn how to receive it from others when they're reflecting, the light of reflecting God's light and love to us. So, that's what you'll get here. And I think there's so many places, definitely on the internet, and I'm sure as you are navigating conversations with other people, that life is happening to a lot of folks. And I think it definitely creates some negative thoughts and thinking when it comes to relationships. So I want to create a space where we can kind of dive into the principles that we can use to build the foundation of our relationships on, but also bring some positivity, and life to it, and hopefully inspire people to believe that it's still possible to find someone or connect with someone, meet someone that you can, live out a lifetime with and, share the beauty of this life with. So that is my goal. That is my goal, whether it's me singing on stage, or whether it's me doing this podcast or writing books or coaching. That's my core message. So welcome if you're new. Thank you for taking the time to, pop into my little corner of social media. So I appreciate you guys. And if you like anything that you hear tonight, which I hope you do, I definitely want you to come back. And also, if you are, on YouTube, or even if you're not and you're on the other platforms, definitely go over to my YouTube channel and definitely subscribe, like, and comment, so that this type of content can be spread if you feel like it's beneficial. It was beneficial to you and you feel like it could be beneficial to others. That is something that you can do that doesn't take much time or energy or effort, and to help me out. So I appreciate you guys. All right, so enough about me. Let's get into tonight's topic. Tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about anxiety. And if you're on any of the platforms, I titled tonight's episode, what, what's worth being anxious about is the question for tonight. What's worth being anxious about? And, I've encountered, especially with what's going on right now in culture, and really all around the world, there are so many things that people, are concerned and worried about. So the mental health of people and what they're going through right now is definitely a topic that we definitely is an ongoing conversation and that we definitely need to discuss. And when you're anxious and you're riddled with anxiety, it is, at least in my opinion, is just one of the worst feelings, I call it like desirous unease or uneasing desire, whether it's to want to know an outcome of something or being concerned, having your own narrative of what you think a result of something is going to be. It's just like, and there's really no getting a grip on it, as far as like if you are, because when you're anxious, you're thinking about something that hasn't even happened yet, so whether you're predicting something's going to happen or, like I said, you're, waiting on an outcome or a result, it doesn't really serve anything, So that's the question for tonight. I guess I've already answered the question based on what I've said, but definitely that's the question I'm going to put out tonight to you guys. And then I'll also give you a quote for tonight that I believe I came across, which I'm going to show you a video on the channel that I came across that I heard someone say on a video, and I thought this is great to introduce and present to my listeners on my podcast, because I think it's a great mindset to kind of counter and combat being anxious in life. So that's the question. I'm going to leave you guys room to think about it. And the question again is what is worth being anxious about? I think, and the reason why I pose that question for you guys tonight is because, as I've stated in the way I've answered so far, or just giving you my feedback and my thoughts on, anxiousness and being anxious, whether it's in your life overall or just within the area of relationships, that it just doesn't serve anything. It's, even if you think it's something that, you're anxious about and it's something that is like a natural part of life, or, maybe some people are anxious about their children's safety and, things that we can probably put a justifiable, reasoning as to why this concern is coming up or this worry is coming up. It's just that the worry, it's not a resource or a tool that can solve anything, or that will, what's the word I'm looking for, bring a certain type of ease to whatever it is that you have a concern about. It just doesn't really serve anything in the process. So one of the ways that I know for me, and I will let you know, and I'll disclose that to you guys in a few minutes, about the area that I feel like I've definitely experienced anxiousness in. But one of the ways that I combated it was actually asking the very question that I presented to you guys, which is, what's worth being anxious about? Like, if I can peer out on every area of life, what area is worth being anxious about? Meaning, when something is worth doing something, it means that it either requires, it has a necessary requirement or prerequisite where you need to put the energy in towards it. Because if you don't put the energy and effort to do, whatever it is that you need to do to resolve an issue or to get an outcome that you want or to sharpen your skill, whatever it is, when you deem that something was worth doing, it means that you properly assessed it and you said that, okay, the exchange that I'm going to get was worth my investment of my time, my energy. It serves some kind of purpose. And with anxiety and anxiousness, it doesn't, it doesn't help ease your own inner being. It doesn't create any kind of peace within you, and oftentimes blocks us from getting and receiving the clarity that we need to step forward. If it is an issue that we're dealing with or something that we're waiting for, it doesn't bring that ease, right, in the waiting. And it just doesn't really serve us in any way. So again, I just ask myself, like, okay, what from the most essential parts of life, from that area to the things that are a little bit more smaller, none of it, none of it. And I always get the same answer. It's like, none of it, there's nothing that's worth being anxious over. Because it just becomes one of those things where it's not a tool that you can really use. So that's the first part of it, is that I actually ask myself the question to kind of give myself just some space to appropriate and give a breather so that I can appropriate my emotions and kind of bring a calm to myself. And the second advice or tip that I'm going to give tonight is this quote that I came across. I'm going to play the video for you guys shortly so you can hear it, because it was a video that I found on this channel, Sprout. I'm proud of myself because usually I come on here and I refer, the videos that I come across, and oftentimes, I'm so sorry guys, I don't remember, where I got it from. So I said, this time I'm going to make sure that I, tell you guys what channel I came across and saw it on. And it's Sprout, and it's spelled Sprought. And I love the channel because, and I guess it's really two things that I will tell you guys that also helps me, because I was watching the channel because if you've been on my podcast before, one of the things that both my husband and I do to not only help ensure that we're making, wise decisions in our lives, and also to combat anytime there's like anxiousness that it is coming up within us, is that we fast forward it. So if there is whether it's a big decision that we have to make or a small one, either way, we try to practice this, at every end. But definitely if there are essential big decision making that has to be done, we literally act like we're 80 years old. We fast forward it and, ask ourselves, are we going to regret this decision when we're in our rocking chair, or are we gonna say, okay, yeah, this was, I'm pleased with this decision. This was the right decision to make after I'm looking over my life, because, in the moment when you're young and you don't necessarily take everything into consideration, but when you get older, you start to think, I think, more holistically in life. So let me say the quote to you guys before I watch the video, but I brought that up because this particular channel, Sprout, I love it. The gentleman, and it didn't show his name, who the gentleman is in the video, but he basically goes around and interviews elderly people who are in their 80s, 90s. I think one time he had someone who was like 90 something, and it's pretty amazing seeing him do the interviews. And he basically goes and asks them a myriad of questions, but what would you give what advice would you give to a younger person? What are the things that you were worried about or anxious about that you feel like you didn't really need to? And he asks a lot of questions, and I love it because literally that's one of the ways that I implement, and I can, I'm grateful that the channel exists, because you don't always have people in your circle who are saged and have that much wisdom and life experience to talk to, unless you're going to go to like maybe a nursing home or something like that. And if you're blessed enough to have your grandparents and your great grandparents to talk to. So I really like that he created this channel that you can literally just go on, and that's his main mission. And he goes around. And I think it's twofold, because oftentimes the people who, elderly people in our communities and in society, can be pushed to the side. And that's unfortunate, because when we do that, then we miss out on all of the wisdom that they have to offer, to give to us. So I think it serves, kind of kills two birds with one stone, because he can make them feel, and put value in who they are and what they can offer to society, as well as we can, learn from the advice that they give, and learn from maybe some of their mistakes and some of their, wins in life. So let me tell you what the quote is, and then I'll play the video. So the quote is, it goes like this. It says, if you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. If you live in the present, you're at peace. All right, I'll say it again. Absolutely love that quote. And like I said, I'll play the video so you can hear the person who said it on the video. So I will say it again for you guys, and you let me know what your thoughts on. I always do this. Do you think it's first of all, that there's truth in it? It's a truthful statement, and that there are some gems of wisdom that you definitely can pull out and apply to your life. And also, do you think it's a good mindset, for you to have in your relationships, and how, right, it can afford our relationships to continually grow and thrive? So again, the quote goes like this. If you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. If you live in the present, you're at peace. Let me say that one more time since I messed it up. The quote for tonight is, if you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. If you live in the present, you're at peace. Absolutely love that quote. I definitely think it has a lot of truth in it, a lot of wisdom in it. And I think it's really good, of course, for the main topic that we're talking about in dealing with anxiousness, just overall in your life. But I definitely think it's a great mindset to apply and put in the center of your relationships, because I coach, and have been blessed enough, thank God, to coach enough couples to see that there are patterns that come up in relationships. And a lot of times the anxiety that comes within a relationship and between the two people is because they're either living in the past, which maybe there were things that either they like to experience, that saying where it's like, oh, I want it to be like how it was in the beginning, whether it's the honeymoon phase, before life happened, maybe before we had kids, maybe before, we had all these different responsibilities and work and things like that, right? So it can either be where it's like, okay, if we could just bring it back to the way it was at the beginning, everything would be okay. Or it's on the other spectrum where it's like, no, I don't want it to be like it was in the past, because now you have the person who is living in the present, but they're stuck on the same scene. That's how I usually explain it to my coaching clients. It's like our whole life is like this beautiful script, this beautiful movie that is supposed to, continue playing until it's, until it's the end. It's until it's the last hurrah. But unfortunately, if there are things in our relationship that we experience that don't bring us good sensations, good feelings, we can get stuck on one scene, and that scene will literally replay in our hearts and our minds over and over again. And so it's hard for the person to even be able to see if growth has occurred in the relationship, because they're so stuck in the past. And it does exactly what that quote said, which it unfortunately, because that person is stuck and stagnant, even though life is continuing on, then it does bring on, feelings of depression and sadness. And the reason why is because you're stuck there in the past, and you're not willing to connect to what's going on in the present and then build from there, because that's the only way we can build, right? We can't build wishing it was like it was in the beginning, because I always say to my clients, whether it's you were friends and then the friendship built and developed into now where you're like, okay, we can, this is becoming more intimate now. And I think you are potentially someone I can navigate and build a life with. And then you elevate into marriage and you have children. All of those different beautiful stepping stones of life come with an increase of our capacity, because there's more responsibility that's laid within our lives and upon us, right? And that's a good thing, because that means that you, in your personal development, in your collective growth, as your union grew, as you grew together, it meant that now you were able and capable to sustain, right, a certain amount of either success within the relationship. You were definitely, I guess, developed in a certain way where, right, God was like, you can handle more. So that means you were a good steward over whatever small amount that was given to you to become now, be able to be a steward over of a lot more. And if our capacity is increasing as well as our responsibility, we cannot think that the same thing that we did in the beginning is what is going to, right, be the thing that we need to place in the relationship now. And don't get me wrong, I know some people probably are listening to this, and I'm sure you've heard from many other experts or, coaches and therapists and things like that, where they say, same thing you did in the beginning as far as dating your partner and things like that. That's great. I do believe that, that you can do that. But I also know that just by the law of like nature, whether it's you're exercising, whether it's you're on a job and you have a greater responsibility, you can do those same things, but we might need to maybe change up a little bit the way that we're meeting those needs, because the tank is bigger. If that makes any sense. I mean it in that way. And so sometimes we'll get stuck thinking we need to do the exact same thing in the beginning, when no, it's not. So for example, maybe I can give you a small example that might help bring a greater understanding to the point that I'm trying to make. And I'll use it from the perspective of becoming a wife and becoming a mother. Right, when you're single, or you're in for many women, of course, there's outliers and not every woman is the same, but just on average, from the women that I have spoken to, right, if you're single or newly married, and there are no kids or anything like that, and you and your partner have your own kind of space and you're creating your own environment, right, the things that a woman will find where it's like you're meeting her needs. Of course, it's like, of course, intimate time, quality time, affection, of course, things like that is great. But if you talk to a woman who, now has come into maybe motherhood, she's become a mother, whether it's she biologically had those kids or maybe she adopted. So her responsibility is greater. And so oftentimes in a relationship, you'll find where the man, he'll try to do those same things, right? Maybe like give her flowers, and we love flowers, most of us, flowers or time, or maybe give her things. And if you talk to a lot of mothers, a lot of times they'll just say, if you can help me with some of the domestic work in the household, if you can like cook dinner one night, if you can just put the load of laundry in, right? The things that create and give them more space to have more time, a moment of time to their self, is something that is like, it actually is something that will not only give them where they feel kind of refreshed and just have a moment to themselves, but it also will ignite in a lot of women, where now that space has been given to her, it will oftentimes kind of rev up her what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe, I don't know, lack of better words, urge, or inspire the intimacy, right, between her and her husband. Oftentimes, sometimes husbands don't really understand that, because they're thinking, right, this is what worked, right, when we were dating. This is what worked in the beginning of our marriage, and now it's not. It's actually, wait, if I put the laundry up, or if I if I cook dinner, if I really help you in this domestic work, that's going to, increase, your libido towards me. It seems like those two things wouldn't be connected, but so the need is still being met, right? But it's being met differently because of how, right, the landscape of the relationship has changed, and the responsibility that has increased for her, and so that's what I mean. And don't get me wrong, the dates and everything is great, but I remember reading it wasn't an article, it was from a therapist that I absolutely love her work, and she deals with relationships that deal with infidelity and divorce and things like that. Her name is Esther Perel, and I was reading her book, Mating in Captivity, and I love her book because she makes her points, and then she usually has like examples from her actual real life, right? Of counseling couples. Of course, their names are different just for their privacy, but I remember she also introduced something like what I just the example that I just gave you guys. And I remember the woman in her counseling session, she was telling the therapist that, my husband, I'm grateful because we are kind of etching out the time to have the date nights and to go out and things like that, and we'll hire a babysitter. And then she said she was realizing that, she would come home, and then the babysitter would kind of like, want her to, they have to pay her for the night, and then kind of go over when the next time she would come in. And she realized that as soon as she did that, it was like she flipped right back into being a mother for her. That's how she internalized it. She flipped right back into being a mother. And it totally, right, her husband would think, okay, great, we just went out to dinner, we just had time, nice little nightcap, right, is what he's thinking. But because of her engagement with the babysitter, it literally flipped her back into out of the whole, right, where it's just me and my husband, into just feeling like a mother again. And it was hard for her, which is hard for a lot of women sometimes, to kind of switch, not that you're, I guess the best way I can say it is kind of switch the mood, right? When you feel, and this is what she said in the book, where I feel like I've been kind of just giving all day, when it's time for me to now engage with my husband, it just feels like another like chore or need, where it's not, I'm not interpreting it like it's going to be us having an exchange, a pleasurable exchange that's going to boost my energy and give me strength. It just seems like it's just another thing that I have to do and is on my long to-do list. And one of the things that I really appreciated about that is that one of the things that they started doing was that once they had their date nights and they had their time and they had to go home, the husband started to talk to the babysitter, and he would pay her, and he would kind of, basically handle that. And it helped her to continue on, right, in that mood of it just being them. And so that's another example of, right, it's still meeting the same things, but we have to assess where we are right now and how we can I guess be creative or change to meet those. Change not yourself, but of course how you meet those needs, because we grow and we transform, and those responsibilities sometimes will call for something different for us to do. So again, going back to the anxiety part of either being stuck in the past and not being able to get off of that same reoccurring scene of whatever, wrong thing or whatever happened in the relationship to give you some kind of negative sensation. If we continue to cycle that one scene over and over again in our minds, we're going to be stagnant, and that is most definitely going to cause us to be depressed. Or even if we're wishing to, can it just be just like it was in the beginning? That's almost like insanity, right? Like, no, it's not going to be like it was in the beginning, because we've started growing, right? Like this life together, we've increased our capacity. So what we can hold, as well as new levels of creativity or different ways, again, like I said, to meet those needs, we want to bring, I guess the best way, just like what that quote said, is that if you live in the present, you're at peace. Is that if you find yourself on either of those spectrums, whether something was wrong, maybe there was a breach of trust, maybe just something happened, and you haven't been able to get over it, or you're on the other end of like, oh, I just wish we could be back at the honeymoon stage in the beginning. The idea is that there's no way, right, to build further and truly assess where you are in the relationship, rather than getting in the present and seeing what the needs of the relationship are now and how we can best, right, meet those needs. And so that's why I love that quote, and I think it's great for putting it in to relationships, because it's a nice reminder, of like, okay, if I live in the past, I am going to be depressed, because one, I can't change what happened to the past. I can, look at it and choose a different perspective to look at it, so that I'm not feeling like I'm underneath what happened, but I can't change it. So it will do no good for me to just stay there and relive, and just that same scene reoccurring in my heart and my mind. And I definitely don't want to be anxious and live in the future, because it hasn't come yet. It's not here. So it's going to drive you crazy if you try to either predict, if you just stay anxious in the waiting part of it, which many of us, right, the anxiety comes in when we're either having to be patient or having to wait to either see if the result that we want we get, or the outcome or experience that we want that we'll get, or even if we are waiting for, right, maybe a good example would be like if you're waiting for some results from the doctor or something like that. Anxiety will cause you to create some false narratives in your mind before you even get what the truth of the matter is. So we don't want to stay there. And the best way to not either live in the past or to try to live in the future is to honestly only do what we can, which is live in the present. Because that's where we'll find our peace, because that's the only place that we can actually, right, do something in real time that will impact us or impact the people that are in our lives. Hey, Emily, how are you? We are talking about anxiousness, anxiety in relationships. And the question that I put out tonight is, what's worth being anxious about? What's worth being anxious about? Is there anything where you can kind of look back, in your experiences so far where you're like, okay, yeah, I was definitely anxious about that. And when I look back at it, it was definitely worth it. It served some kind of purpose, or it was necessary. So that's the question for tonight. And the quote, I'll read it for you one more time since you just came in. It's a quote that I love that I came across from the podcast Sprout, where the gentleman goes around interviewing basically elderly people, people in their 80s, 90s, sometimes 70s, and I think 60s too, late 60s. And he basically asks them questions about life. And we get to learn from them the gems of wisdom that they share. And so I came across this quote, and I presented the quote as a way for you to have a mindset that can combat when anxiety comes upon, right, us. And so the quote is, if you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. If you live in the present, you're at peace. So that's the quote for tonight. Feel free to let me know your thoughts on any of that. And we were just talking about how it's good to implement that in relationships, because many of the problems that come up and issues that come up in a lot of relationships is either sometimes where people are replaying situations that have occurred that they either did not like, that maybe there was a breach of trust and et cetera. And they, even though, maybe they've made the choice and the decision to continue the relationship and grow with this person, unfortunately, the replay button is on, and so they're stuck in that same scene, and it's hard to actually grow from where they are, because they're, even though in real time life is continuing on, they are still stuck in the past. As well as it can be on the other end where someone is just wishing like it was, if it could only be like it was in the beginning when we first started. And that's, you're not really going to, it's the same, right? It's the same principle, even though the person might be wishing to go back to the past because the past was good. And that's when everything seemed to be at the most pleasurable or the most joy or the most at peace. It's still living in the past, even if you feel like you're trying to, go back to a routine that made the relationship feel better. We still have to assess where we are right now, especially if the relationship has transformed and elevated, where the people have more responsibility, to think that we can do the same exact routine that we did in the past, when your capacity has increased, is not going to, right? It's like you started out as a shot glass, and now you have, 8 ounces container, or maybe 16 ounce container, because you have built, more, your life has developed and increased. So if you try to put that little shot glass that you had in the beginning, it's not going to fill, even though you're trying to do a similar, right, act that you did in the beginning. We just have to really, truly take the moment to assess and process where we are and what are the things that truly do fill us up in the best ways for where we are right now. And so I said it was a great quote to definitely implement in relationships, just to remind ourselves to not get stuck. And it definitely can combat anxiousness, because we know that anxiousness is kind of worry and concern and unease, about something that really just hasn't happened yet, So So Emily says, I think it's good to be euphoric, but it can make you less likely to feel satisfied if something in your mind doesn't match up to what it was in the past. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said that quote is a really good quote, and just not just a quote, but a mindset to take on in the relationship because, yeah, it can definitely do exactly what you said. And that's why I think even if it's like like you said, being euphoric or thinking about when moments were, I guess at its most best quality for you is great. But I think what that does is that it sometimes will block you from experiencing something greater. And I usually say this to a lot of my clients, and I don't know if I have any men on here tonight, but oftentimes I'll talk to some of the clients that are men, and then I'll say to them, because I've heard it from a lot of men, when they converse about marriage, and a lot of men, they'll say, oh, don't, they'll tell, a lot of older men will tell a lot of younger men, their apprehensions about marriage and the things that they think automatically change when you get married and things like that. And certain things like, oh, sexual intimacy, don't get married because that's going to change. And let's just say a lot of different things. And usually when they bring that up, I say, I totally understand. And there have been plenty of people that I've talked to where they've experienced that. And women's bodies do go through so many different changes in life and many different chemical, changes that can affect her libido, right? Not making any excuses, but it's just nature. It's just the truth that can affect her libido. And oftentimes I'll say, of course, that's why we need to have topics on relationships about sexual intimacy, how marriage changes that aspect of relationship. And I also say that I think with receiving elevations in life, again, it comes with more responsibility. It comes with an increase of your capacity. And I don't think it's any different when it comes to getting married and the intimacy that you can experience in a marriage. I think that if people leave it open and don't automatically, right, put those predictions that they put on younger men before they go into marriage, that honestly you can experience your intimacy with your wife on greater levels. I think the world sometimes make you think differently, and it's unfortunate. They'll make you have this thought like, oh, if you're living the single life, it's the best, and that's the best time you're going to experience. And I don't believe that that's true, because when you choose to be with someone and you're choosing to be in a loyal, committed relationship, and you are committed to knowing each other on deeper levels, oh man, the experience, the intimacy that you experience, there's nothing like it. And it elevates it. It doesn't decrease if there's openness between both people, both, the partners, to, right, leave openness and space and say, well, we've chosen to elevate our relationship and be with each other for a lifetime. So if we can kind of take off the mindset that might have been placed upon us by society or other people that we've heard that says, oh, it goes down the drain. Once you get married, then they can actually leave some room to experience the truth that if you elevate in something, especially as something as essential and an in-depth relationship as marriage, that it's supposed to increase. It's supposed to have higher heights, not necessarily decrease. So hello, Mr. Butcher, how are you? Thank you for popping in. I'm going to read a statement, I think. Emily made, and she says, and I think it can be good. It can be a good quote in general and not just in relationships. Yeah, absolutely. Overall. That's why I said overall for our life, we can definitely use that quote because I think it can be challenging, right? To live in the present. It can be really, really challenging to live in the present. You would think that it wouldn't be, but it is. And I think because we are people of progress and we want to, set goals and meet markers in life, that it makes it a challenge and a fight oftentimes to, just be present where you are and enjoy what that space is. I run, and I usually normatively do like long runs, like 5K runs. And I just recently started, I use the Nike Run Club, and I recently just started doing interval running just to do something different. Anybody who works out on the regular, your body kind of gets used to a workout routine. And so you kind of have to switch it up. So this was my, you know, way to kind of switch up my running routine. And so I'm doing a guided run on Nike Run where there's a coach and he guides you through the interval running. And it's like 8 interval runs, where you're running at a certain top speed and you're, a strong way. And then you get like a maybe 60-second, break. And so I love it. But the coach, he always makes me laugh because when you're like halfway to it, he usually makes the statement that, okay, you just finished your 4th run, you just hit it strong, and how many runs do you have left, and so it's like simple math, right? And he even like kind of baits you in and says, okay, how many runs do you have left? It's like, okay, that's simple math. And then so you want to say 4 more left because there's 8 in total, and he's like, no, only the next run. That's all that matters. That's all that there is. And, it makes me think of this quote because it's so true, right? It's like the only thing you need to think about is your next interval run, and I just thought about it in life overall. It's so true. It's like no matter, and I guess it's the quote where it says, man plans and God laughs, because you can plan for, as much as, and it's good to set goals and it's good to have something to aim towards, but we all know that in the only way that we're achieving those goals is to take it step by step and moment by moment and be in the present. And so I just thought about that that's something that also can definitely apply to tonight. So there is a video that I want to show you guys tonight, and it is where the quote comes from. And, I always say one of the things you can do in your relationship to, whether it's not just romantic relationships, but honestly, you can use it in your whole life. It has done nothing but help me to learn from other people's experience, and just take on so much saged advice that I can apply to my life. And I always say it on the podcast, which is listen to, if you can, if you have grandparents in your life, if you have older people in your life who have had, a certain amount of life experience, definitely sit down and talk to them, because they are at a point where, they're looking at life with a very full scope, a full lens. And the things that you will hear from them, because they've already walked through a certain amount of life, is only going to equip you to be able to learn from them and maybe not either take some of the same pitfalls or, right, glean from some of the things that they did that was advantageous. So I'm going to play a little bit of the video for you guys tonight of where the quote came from. And and then I'll come back and hear your thoughts are on it. All right, so let me play the video for you guys, and I will be back.
You could go back in time knowing what you know today and give your younger self one piece of advice. What would you say?
People view you as not an ongoing person anymore.
It's sad and lonely. There's no cure and there's no hope.
It's a big mistake.
That's something that I only discovered 40 years into my life.
5 years ago, I wasn't like this at all.
It's hard, bloody hard today. You make yourself miserable.
You want the truth?
In this video, I'll be in Montreal, Canada, asking strangers in their 80s, some of the oldest and wisest people in the world, what advice they would give to their younger self. Let's get into it. How old are you?
88.
What does it feel like to be 88?
Well, I just came back from my cardiologist. I'm in perfect shape physically, but I lost my wife a couple of years ago, so mentally I'm still working on it.
How was that like, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it's sad and lonely. I eat most of my meals alone, but I'm doing okay. As long as I'm in good physical shape for another year, that'll be fine. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get there.
Yeah. How long were you guys together for?
63 years. It was a perfect relationship, but, you know, my wife contacted ALS. She lived for a year after the diagnosis, but there's no cure and there's no hope, and she had no quality of life. But she opted for medical assistance in dying and went very quietly and with dignity.
What was your favorite memory of her?
Oh, everything. 3 sons and 7 wonderful grandkids. We did a lot of cruising. We were in Vietnam, we were in the Baltics. We had a good life.
What did she mean to you?
Everything.
How old are you?
70.
What does it feel like to be 70?
Oh, man. It's been a rough year. My wife died at the end of March, and my mother died 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, I'm doing good.
How long were you and your wife together?
35 years. It was a great combination. We did real well. So I kind of lost my mother, who I was with for 70 years. Mm-hmm. And I lost my wife, with whom I was with for 35 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of adjustments.
Can you define the word love?
Wishing the best for the other person.
What is important to you guys at this point in life?
I think for me, now I lost my husband this year. He was 97. And it's very hard to live alone after you've lived with someone for 60 years. Really a different kind of living. And everything starts to go. Like your back told me I've got bones broken in my back. I'm like, broken? So that's why I'm with the walker. Like 5 years ago, I wasn't like this at all. Everything goes. My eyesight is going. But I'm alive. I'm here, and I see my grandchildren, and I see my kids.
All right, I just want to cut in here. It's the first video that we filmed, I think, where an overwhelming number of the interviewees have dealt with loss recently. These videos, it's one thing to listen to the advice you hear, but it's also another thing to really think about what these people are saying. Like, we are going to be going through very similar emotions and feelings that they are going through right now. I just invite you to take the time to text somebody that you love. Not text them, honestly. Don't text them. Take time to call somebody, to go make an appointment with somebody that you love. Tell them that you love them. Tell them you appreciate them. And you never know when the last time.
All right, so I just wanted to pause the video there. I think definitely when I first saw this video, that definitely, before he even took a moment out to pause himself, when they were shooting this, because it definitely impacted me when I was hearing all of, the first 3 people that he interviewed and how they had, lost, whether it was their spouse, and I think one gentleman lost his mom and his spouse. And it made me, of course, you feel sad, of course, because and I think on a recent podcast that we did here, where I talked about that, no matter what, we're going to experience loss in this life. And I was talking about pain and suffering and things like that we'll experience. And even when if you are gifted enough, to meet your person, the person you choose to live this lifetime with, that, right? Unless we peacefully go, like in the Titanic, where there's the elderly couple that goes together and we're both going together. If that's not happening, you're going to experience, even just losing a person who you gave your whole heart to, your whole life to. And you're going to have to experience that. There's no way, and I was saying in the podcast that there's no way to escape it. And while you experience that, there's the other end of it where there's this like deep, joy and satisfaction when you hear them talk about who their partners were to them. Like the other man said, she was everything and we lived a good life, and you know that the depth of the sadness that they're experiencing because they're no longer with them is also, right, because of the richness of the life that they lived with them. And just, at least for me, I can almost feel the gratitude in their voice for being able to experience that with them, even though knowing that, right, even good things will have to come to an end. And so at Automac, I love that he paused in the video because it hit him in the same way that I'm certain that definitely hit me. I don't know, for those of you who are watching, if it hit you in the same way. But, and especially in this current day, modern day culture where people sometimes don't even believe that a love, like a lot of them were, how long they were saying they were married to their spouse, that it even exists now, or if it's even worth it, or if it's even possible. I loved hearing and seeing them state that it most definitely is, and see the amount of love, that even in their passing that they still have for them. Just makes you really, as he did, stop and think about, the precious things in life, and wanting to make sure that you connect with the people that you love and tell them, right? Because we are all going through, when it comes to life and death, going to the same process in a way. We're not all, right, going to pass on the same way, but we all know that this life is transient and it will come to an end. So I just wanted to pause there because I just was like, wow, seeing them and their responses, that definitely was a tearjerker, and definitely makes you kind of evaluate the things that are important in life, which that's why I love doing this, because sometimes the anxiousness that we feel, oftentimes it's things that we just should not even, right, throw the concern there, throw the worry there. There's nothing really we should, but there are oftentimes where there are things that we're anxious about, and it's futile, it's not even an essential, part of life. And so definitely hearing people talk about their life and their loved ones that past puts it into proper perspective. So I want to go back because we didn't get to the quote yet, but I just wanted to pause for a second and kind of check in with you guys and, respond to some of the video. So I'm going to play it, a little bit of it again, so you can hear some more of their answers to the questions that he asked. All right, and then I will be back.
If you could go back in time knowing what you know today and give your...
What's the truth? That's what they think. I must have thought the same thing when I was younger.
What have you done in your life to feel this good at this point?
A lot of exercise. I'm in the gym 3-4 times a week, bicycling, walking. Like even now, I'm going for lunch. I'm up to 10,000 steps. Yeah.
Amazing.
My grandfather died when he was about 97, and he remained intellectually active to the very last day of his life. And I'm very busy. I'm writing, I'm doing voiceovers, I'm very, very busy. My days are full. If you know how to channel your creativity and you let others benefit from it, you've defeated age.
I'm also a fine artist, and nobody can tell you when to stop that. So you're in control. It's not like you have to retire from your job. And that, I think, is very, very satisfying in some ways, that you can just keep producing, keep making.
What's the truth about life that you could teach to young people?
If you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. But if you live in the present, you're at peace and focused on the present.
That everything is impermanent, So let's enjoy this moment 100%. Everything has a beginning, everything has an end. When we are young, we think that it's never going to end. It's a big mistake.
Enjoy the moment.
Exactly. And also not to be so full of yourself and so proud in the sense of empty pride, what you can do with your body or what your achievements. You know, as you get older, you see that many of those things get weaker, you know, like your body is not as strong, so you cannot do as much. But when you are young, you know, sometimes you look at old people and you say, oh, you know, why don't they move faster, you know? Right. Why don't they understand, you know?
Right.
I guess when you are confronted with somebody like that and then you feel your impatience growing, so that's the moment to practice deep breathing and mindfulness. That's the way to combat stress.
If you could go back in time knowing what you know today.
All right. Oh my goodness. So many gems just in that little snippet. Of course, you heard the quote that I presented to you guys tonight, that if you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. But if you live in the present, right, you're at peace. So definitely, I'm sure that's exactly where, and that's why I wanted to play it, because I wanted to give credit where credit was due. It was that gentleman that said it, and the channel Sprout for, having the platform so that I can come across it. But another statement that the other gentleman made that I absolutely love, and it's probably because I'm a creative, that I love that he said that when he said basically that, if you remain creative and you allow others to benefit from your creativity, you have basically defeated age. And I love that quote. Oh my gosh, because I definitely, I am a creative. I'm a singer, I'm an artist. So I definitely love that. And you guys always hear me. If anybody is definitely a repeater to my podcast, I always say that the things that drive me is creating things that will outlive me. Like that is my, main thing, is just to create things that outlive me, whether it's the songs that I sing, whether it's even these podcasts. My family can hear the principles that I talked about. My children, when they grow up and they have their children, my great, right? They can have access to these, videos. And so, yeah, you do defeat age in that way. And I do think staying creative is a big part of it. So I love that he said that, because I definitely think that is very truthful. And, in the responsibility, when the responsibilities of life come upon us, definitely can kind of squeeze the creativity, out of our being and who we are. But I always, whether it's my clients, my couples, or just the singles that I advise, that definitely creativity is one of the things that have helped me be able to navigate the challenges of life and not feel like, squeezed and so much under pressure that I felt like, I couldn't make it or I was broken. The creativity definitely helped that. So I love that he said that. So I think I think that's also another tool that you can use to help to combat, anxiety, battling or dealing with anxiety within relationships or just within your life overall, is definitely stay creative in some shape, form, or fashion. And just golden advice. Honestly, very golden advice that they gave. And there was another portion of it. I won't play it, just out of respect, for their channel and their content. But there was one thing that another, and definitely check the channel out. Again, it's the video that I just played. The channel is called Sprout, Sprought. It's on YouTube. It is most definitely, it will be worth every minute of your time that you take to hear the sage wisdom that they offer. And he also interviews younger people too, just to to hear what, their experiences are and what advice they have to give. So it's worth it, most definitely. I'm not going to send you anywhere that I feel that it's not going to be a proper investment of your time and energy, because I don't want you to waste your time and energy and not feel like you're getting, enriched in some way. So there is another part in that interview where he asks one of the ladies who, unfortunately, her husband lived a beautiful long life but passed recently, and she said that, if there was anything that she could do, is that she just wouldn't argue. If there's advice that she can give, a young person, is that, if her husband could be back, she would just not argue, because it's just, she just said it was just a waste of time. And she felt like, knowing, the precious moments and how life is precious and the time that you have with that person, it's better to just kind of, embrace that person and enjoy the moments that you have with them. And so I thought that was interesting, that she said that. And I know for maybe people who are listening, you might be like, everybody argues, and I think because I'm thinking about Ben and I, and we don't have like that many arguments, honestly. We really don't. I think you can have disagreements and you can sit down and you can talk and you can, get understanding from each other. And that's fine, but I don't think you have to, I don't think to say that the relationship is real or enriching, that you have to argue, on a certain amount of basis, because I've experienced, and we've been friends for a long time and married, for, what is it now, 19 years. So yeah, we haven't had much arguments. We have had them, but not much. And I just hearing her saying it helped me, to kind of reaffirm, like, yeah, right, because time is precious. And you want to value the time that you have with that person and use it to the best possibility, right? And enjoy the quality of time that you have with each other. So I thought that was also very good advice to give to people when we're listening to those interviews. So just to kind of recap what we've talked about so far and kind of wrap up tonight's episode, we're talking about how to deal with anxiety in relationships and life overall. And the first thing I said was the question that I stated to you guys tonight, which is that helps me kind of combat any anxiousness that will come up in me, which is the question I ask myself is like, what is worth being anxious about? When I look over, and peer out on all the different areas of my life and aspects of life, is there anything worth being anxious about? And if we take it in a biblical way in text, it says be anxious for nothing, literally nothing, because it's not going to serve you. It's not going to serve you because it literally takes you out of the present where you can be empowered to do something, right? So that's one of the things that I do. Just ask myself, like, what is worth being anxious about? And then, of course, whether it's that scripture that comes back to me that says, be anxious for nothing, just in all things, right? Prayer and supplication towards God for the things that you can't control, right? And then just little steps, step by step, building towards the things that you do have, right, a hand in and you can participate. And then you just take it from there. So that's one. And then we talked about this quote for tonight, and I'll say it one more time because it definitely is worth saying multiple times that we saw from that video, which is that if you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. And if you live in the present, you're at peace. And I will tell you, from a little girl, I have always prayed for God to give me peace. And it's because I experience people going through mental health challenges around me. And so how I internalized that and what it afforded me and how to process it was that, okay, I see older people around me going through mental health challenges because clearly things happen in life that bring grievances to them, that grieves their heart, their soul, and it's hard for them to handle it. And so I, in my own little, response to that prayer was, God, please, if nothing else, grant me peace through this process or whatever process that I'm going to go through now and in the future. And thankfully, it I have felt that. I have felt the biblical meaning of the peace that surpasseth all understanding, even in faced with a lot of challenging times in life. And so, that's basically, another way to look at that quote when he says, when you're living in the present, you're at peace, because it will be crippling to your mind if you're launching out into the future and you can't do anything about it, right? That's the whole, I think, anxiousness. It just cripples you because there's nothing you can do about it, whether you're looking towards the future or whether you're replaying and staying stuck in the past. But at least if you're in the present, there is something in the moment that you can do, whether it be something very little and micro or something that is big to you and will create a rippling impact. So that's two. And then we also saw another quote in that video that I absolutely love, which is stay creative. Guys, like if there is, I always talk about fundamental principles here, and that you'll know it's a fundamental principle if you can put it out in all the other areas of life and it still rings true. And one of the fundamental principles and truths about living this life is that I do believe that we have co-creative power, meaning like you were born here, sent here with a purpose to serve out of your character, out of your skill sets, certain just right people who you're going to meet who says, oh, exactly what you do is exactly what I'm looking for. Oh my goodness, it's such a breath of fresh air. You'll meet those people, right? And it's in our nature to want to create things, right? Whether it's products, whether it's a service, because there's an innate part of us that knows that we're supposed to create, so I think if you, whatever it is that you decide to do in this life, whether it's thankfully for the people who are able to, right, whatever their profession is also, right, their creative passion. That's a beautiful thing. Not everybody, has that. Thankfully, I do, but not everybody has that. And so people might have another profession that they do that they're not necessarily so passionate about creatively, but leave space, whether it's a hobby that you create where you can, pour your creativity in. And, even if you aren't to the point where you want to sell it or, provide a service for someone else, just pouring into that creativity for yourself will help, to combat, being anxious. Because I think when you step into the creative space, because it's working a different, part and aspects of your brain, it just kind of brings a certain amount of ease in life. And so I definitely 100,000% think that that's something that you can use to combat anxiousness. I remember my husband I'm trying to think, that was like years ago, he bought me this like coloring book. I don't know if you guys, I think it was like, I don't want to say it's a trend, maybe it's still going on now, but at the point that he bought it for me, it was like a lot of people were doing it. And it was like adult coloring books. And he knows that I love coloring, like I color with my kids and things like that. It's very therapeutic. And so he bought like this adult, coloring book. And I mean, when I tell you it's intricate, because like Picasso, okay? Your own Picasso, but just using colored pencils or crayons. And, there would be so many different little, facets to the drawing, and that you would have to color. And if I would do it sometimes at night, like if I put my kids to bed and things like that, and I would just color, and it just was me and my moment, and then I'd show them like the creativity afterwards. And yeah, it just brings so much joy. And it's like anything that was bothering me in that day. It was like, okay, I just colored in my book, outside of, the fact that I do write songs and I can pour, my feelings and my thoughts on matters in that way. And of course, on a grander scale, show it to the world. But I'm just using those two examples so that you can see the degree, right? Where it's a coloring book and it's just to you and yourself, or whether it's something that you feel like, okay, this is something that I feel like I want to share with others. So definitely creativity, find some space for it. It definitely will ease, when you feel like anxiousness is approaching. And lastly, I'm going to share this post that I saw from Facebook with you guys, because the truth is that, your life is precious. Time is precious. Our energy, I always say our time, our faith, those are some of the most, they are the precious currencies in life. And so if you focus on the things that are essential, that bring meaning to your life and that is enriching to you, then you fill yourself with that, then it's harder for the anxiousness to come in, for the other things that don't really hold as much weight. And even in, because maybe some people who are watching this and they're saying, well, the things I'm anxious about are the essential things in my life. Like, I worry about my kids when they go out and if they're going to come back, or I worry about my husband or my wife if they go out and they come back. And what I can say about that is that the worrying's not going to do anything. It's not going to make them safely come back. It's not going to do anything to even ease your own, right, inner being. But what will kind of help that, or maybe not, there's no way to help, anxiousness, the only way I would say more so is to try to alleviate it is knowing the truth, right? That sometimes this life is unpredictable. So in knowing that, what you do with them in the present, in the time that you have them with you, is what, right? It should afford that. It should awaken that within you to say, okay, I want to spend quality time with this person. So if there's a futile argument that's coming on, I don't want us to waste this precious time on this. Let's, shift our energy and do something different, because I don't know. Life is unpredictable. I don't know, right? Life is not this thing where it's like you saw some of the elderly people who were answering questions there, and some of them, man, are so blessed to live life up until like 90 something years old. I think one of the women on there who was explaining about, some of the bones in her back being broken, she was 97, I think, years old in that video. So it's like, wow, she's lived a lot of life, right? But that's not guaranteed to all of us, right? It's not to say, okay, it's this linear thing where you're going to get the fullness of, starting out young and getting to, by the grace of God, and prayerfully, the grace and mercy of God will allow us to live that long. However, we don't want to take it for granted because we don't know. So the best way to kind of handle or deal with the anxiety that is coming up in a way and in an area that you feel like is justifiable because these people are precious to you and you care about them, is to combat it with the truth that the anxiety is not going to ensure the longevity of their life or their safety. So what I can do is, in the moment that I have them, is to pour out my love, to pour out, all of who they are to me, and the gratitude, and make the time that I have with them of great quality and of substance, and create memories that will live beyond us, So I would say remind yourself of that. Because you don't want the anxious energy that there's definitely energy that comes with being anxious that blocks you to be able to experience the people, the very people that you care about and are anxious over, to be able to experience them in the best way possible, in the most pure and authentic way. And we don't want to do that, right? We don't want to block that. So I would say do that, But this post, and this will be the last post that I read to you guys, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Hey, Nirvana, thank you for coming in. We are talking about dealing with anxiety in relationships and, and life overall. So that's been the topic tonight. I'm going to read this post to you guys. Like I said, I came across it on Facebook, and I was like, if this is not the truth, I'm going to have to present this to my people on the podcast, because I was like, okay, this definitely goes along with what we're going to be talking about tonight. So it was basically a post, and the picture was, I didn't want to show y'all a picture because it was like amazing. The picture is basically of these people in line, and then you have like some of them going up towards heaven. And you'll understand it once I say, I don't know if this, I won't call it a poem because it's not. I don't think it rhymes. But not that poems need to rhyme. So, but I don't know. I didn't get poem from it. But I will read the statement that was under the post or in the post. So it says, every minute someone leaves this world behind. Age has nothing to do with it. We are all in the line without knowing it. We never know how many people are before us. We cannot move to the back of the line. We cannot step out of the line. We cannot avoid the line. So while we wait in the line, make moments count, make priorities, make the time, make your gifts known, make a nobody feel like a somebody. I love that one. I'm going to say that one again. Make a nobody feel like a somebody. Make your voice heard. Make the small things big. Make someone smile, make the change, make love, make up, make peace. Make sure to tell your people they are loved, and make sure to have no regrets. Make sure you are ready. And it said that, I don't know what I call it, a poem or the writing is by Marianne Baum. Marianne Baum is the author of that. But I came across it and I was like, this definitely, I think, would be perfect way to kind of add in the conversation tonight. And, right, kind of goes along with what I said about someone who might be listening to this and get anxious about the people that they love. And how instead of just getting anxious, right, just make memories. Make it count, let them know they're loved, stay in a state of gratitude. I always like to say that gratitude and any other emotion can't exist in the same space. So a lot of times if I am dealing with clients who have a lot of anxiousness or anxiety problems, that's the first thing that we do is like, whether you have to write it down or just flood your heart and your mind with a lot of gratitude, and then it slowly, right? And sometimes, honestly, it happens very quickly for a lot of people where it just shifts their gears, and they're filled with the gratitude, so the anxiousness gets removed. So I think that's it, right? And great to put in relationships, right? Because how often, and I write it in my book, 7 Stages of Relationships, 7 Stages of Loving Relationships, is that, unfortunately, we start to treat the people differently in our lives that we love because we decrease the honor. The honor and the gratitude that we have for them starts to decrease because we start to take their time for granted. And man, if we can just not do that, and we can still, keep the honor and increase it, right? Which it should increase with time, right? Especially if you're in a marriage and that person, you've elevated into motherhood or fatherhood, and you see the amazing transformations that, they go through, and it should increase because of, the different sacrifices that are made and things like that. So that's kind of the message that I got throughout the statement that I just read to you guys, which is, make the moments count, and don't let the honor drop, and and continue on with gratitude. And that way, as it's stated in that writing that I read to you guys, that we're all in line. We all know where we are in the line. We can't avoid it. So the best thing we can do is just make the moments count and revel in the opportunity that we are given to have this person, be in our life, and us being able to take in their presence. So, yeah. So that is all, folks, for tonight. Hopefully, some of those tips that you heard tonight, you can apply them, and they'll help you kind of deal with anxiety, because like I said, there's a lot of things going on in life right now that are making people feel anxious, about life, about the direction of our country, so many things, right? From just your own personal life all the way out to, the broad spectrum of the world. And I understand, but all we can do is just remain in the present and see what we can do moment by moment, and love on ourselves, love on the people that God has allowed and afforded to be in our life. And, create things that go beyond, that live beyond you. So, and definitely check that channel out, because if you need any kind of, I know for me, it gives me a reality check if I feel like I am caught in a cycle in my mind, or putting my attention and energy in wrong spaces. Whenever I listen to some of those answers, they put it in the proper perspective, quick, in a hurry. And I'm like, okay, reality check, Sharla. Like, focus on what is essential in life, focus on what's important, handle what you can handle, and then leave the rest honestly to God. Leave the rest honestly to God, and then still stay in tune to see whatever in the moment God tells you to do step by step to, enrich your life on a daily. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. Everybody who popped in, any newcomers, thank you. Bag World DC, a new Bennett. Oh my goodness, I didn't even see you come in. I'm so sorry. I usually say hi to everybody who comes in. Emily, The Weapon, Mr. Butcher, Nirvana, and anybody else who I missed out on. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and coming and popping in with me to join the conversation. I appreciate it. Hopefully something, that was said resonated with you. And if it did, definitely pass by, drop by my YouTube channel, Forever Friends Academy, same name as my podcast, and definitely subscribe, like, comment, share, spread the word, so that if you felt like this is enriching content and you want more people to hear it, that's one of the ways that you can, do that. So I appreciate you. I will be back on Sunday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, next week, we're doing our last hurrah of summer, so I won't have any lives the following week coming up. So I will be back on after that. You too. Have a good night, Emily. Thanks as always for popping in. I appreciate you. All right. So hopefully you guys have a good night, and we'll be back on soon. As I always like to say, always remember to live to love freely, and until next time. All right. Have a good night. Bye.